Thank you very much. Pastry time. Now we're going to get an interview with Prawley and Oduwamne in just a minute, but before we do, I want to go ahead and break down this third and final game and ultimately the dominating 3-0 sweep out of H2K here in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes you excited for the matchups that they're going to have versus Samsung, right? You know, Oduwamne versus Cuvée. Cuvée absolutely smashing in the Samsung series. Then we also have Ryu having some of the best games I've ever seen him have here at Worlds.
Yeah.
And he's going to have his handful with Crown as well. I mean, there are so many things head-to-head just because both those teams have won so many games in a row, obviously. But, you know, pretty much across the board, we've got good matchups.
Yeah, and I think it's two teams performing better than we expected maybe coming into the tournament, especially in the early games. There's going to be a lot about the laning phase between Samsung and H2K. This game, however, I mean, we wanted some changes in the pick-a-man phase from ANX. We got the Zillion, which was not the chase we wanted.
Bring back time, get the same comp again.
Yeah.
Not really.
No, it was definitely disappointing not to see adaptations between the games. And then also, like, in the end, they give away Syndra this time. Other times they picked it themselves and they had Vlad against it. Actually gave them a chance to, like, win the lane at least. Zillion is a losing matchup against Syndra, and Kira obviously fell really far behind.
And ultimately, there will maybe be some learnings for Albus Nox Luna coming out of this World Championships is that in the best of 5, they're going to have to learn how to be more flexible in Champion Select. When things are not working, at a certain point, you got to throw out whatever playbook you came in with and just change it up.
Well, to contrast that, I really like what H2K did in just sticking to what worked for them. The Zyra, the Lee Sin, and the Jace. Just pick it over and over and over. If it wins you the game, it allows you to really save a lot of strategy for your upcoming match, which you know is going to be more important. I mean, honestly, they were very confident coming into this with good reasons for it. And I think that it's going to make that matchup that much more exciting because we haven't even seen what they have prepared in the off time.
And while it was a dominating victory, early game for H2K, once again, let's go ahead and take a look at another play that broke ANX's back here, handing H2K the series, presented to you by Acer. Down in the bot lane here, once again, ANX still never saying die, as is their moniker here. They come in, but unfortunately, H2K already prepped for it.
Yeah, never say die, but they will be doing so. And it all starts with an attempt with a Bard play, but the tunnel is way too long, so they're able to see it. And this play is going to just extend this. They're going to be able to take up one nice little turret here, but a 5-man push to the bottom lane is just way too deadly when you're this far ahead.
It kind of showed the game, you know. ANX were trying to find ganks and skirmishes. H2K were running as a team most of the time, had really good vision. They actually knew where people were going to engage. I think I saw one mistake from H2K in the early game. That was Vander Forgiven pushing up too far after their jungle had already left. Something they have done before. And then obviously later in the game, we had some of these Barons again. And yeah, they're really far ahead. I'm sure the players are losing a bit of focus because, again, they have such a massive goal lead. They're kind of just running around and trying to kill people left and right. But the Baron calls, they have to be spot on if you're going to beat a Korean team.
Definitely agree with that. And the other thing, too, is that, you know, the comp that H2K keeps on running here with a bunch of winning lanes looks super good and can snowball really well. But you have to worry about if some of these early plays don't work out, you know, then we get to see some more, you know, flexibility from that team.
I think the cool thing about that comp actually is the fact that we saw something very similar out of Rox yesterday with the Zyra, the Jace, and the Lee Sin. That because they're on opposite sides of the bracket, you have to imagine that these teams have been playing against each other, which means that that's a really good practice partner for both of them. Very similar styles, and if we saw how Rox demolished EDG yesterday, that might mean that the matchup we have with Samsung against H2K could be a lot closer than we expect.
All right, well, we've got an interview ready with tonight's qualified semifinalists, so let's hand it off to Shox.
Thank you very much. Indeed, joined here by H2K's coach Prawley, as well as the top laner Oduwamne. So first up, congratulations, fantastic performance here. Before we get into your performance, I do want to ask you about kind of your strategy and your mentality going in. ANX was the underdogs, but it did seem that you guys gave them the proper amount of respect with banning out the brand and their power picks. How do you think they've performed, and how do you think you guys have performed overall?
Well, ANX's best strategy is the fact that they have a lot of weird picks that you have to ban out. You can't really pick it away from them. And then the second big strength they have is they don't really give up. And that might sound weird, but a lot of teams, if you're 10K gold up, like we were, they would crumble and die. But ANX is fighting like the game is even, so it's really hard to actually close on them, and that's actually really good quality in a team.
Yeah, that also seemed like it in a couple of games. Even though you guys were far ahead, you still had to fight for those victories. Oduwamne, how do you look back on your performance? You've received a lot of praise from a lot of people so far. I don't know if you read all of that, and you had an amazing series. How does that affect you, and how does that give you confidence going further?
Well, so far, coming through the groups, I started playing a lot better in the second week. So I think that kind of carried into my mentality and into scrims and into today's series. And I think today's series will motivate me even more to play better into the semis. So I think and I hope that I will play a lot better than I did today.
All right, we will see if that happens. Before we talk more about that semifinal, he already played really good, don't you agree?
Yeah, he's just being super humble. But I mean, to his credit, we used to do 1v1s a lot, and I could win. But now every time we do 1v1, I get stomped. So yeah, he's getting better.
Well, let's speak to the team's performance so far. With your history, obviously not the best performance last time around at Worlds. The third place is in Europe. It seems like this is more of the true potential of H2K. For you, who's been with the team for so long, what does that mean to finally see that coming out? And why do you think it has now?
Man, it took you guys long enough, Odo. I don't know. I'm like, it's always been there, and that's why it's always really hard to like be a coach and like sit on the sidelines and watch. Like, I know they can be doing better, and I always believe they could do better, and now I think they finally like believe in themselves and there's a lot more confidence around. So right now there's like a couple of things we have to fix, and then like we're gonna be completely unlocked. So I'd say we're like 80% right now. So when we play Samsung Galaxy, we need to be 100%.
So let's talk about that matchup. You guys will be the underdog in that one. People saying how good Samsung looks, and honestly, they do also completely crush their quarterfinal. So Odoamne, what kind of hope can you give the European fans, and what are your realistic views on that matchup?
I mean, they played really well in their quarterfinals, and they showed that they have lots of strengths and very few weaknesses. But I think it's up to us to show up on our best level, and then we have a chance of taking them down.
All right, we will see what happens. Finally, Prolly, you're going to Madison Square Garden with H2K playing in the semifinal of the World Championship. What's that going to be like?
Ooh, it's going to be good. And I actually really respect that this is the first time as a coach I've gotten like this amount of cheering from an NA crowd. So that's pretty cool. And I'll be honest, when NA was able to play at Madison Square Garden, I can't focus.
Let them cheer for a sec.
When NA got to play at Madison Square Garden earlier, I was actually super, super jealous of them. So this has been kind of a goal. Like, I want to go to Madison Square Garden and play. So I'm actually really proud of these guys for stepping up and showing up so we can go there.
Odo, final thing you want to say about that? I mean, this has been a great theater to play at. Now you get to go to Madison Square Garden. Pretty cool.
I mean, it's cool, but Prolly just cries every night before he goes to sleep that he wants to go to Madison Square Garden. So we just decided to just play well and just get him to Madison Square Garden so he stops crying for once.
All right, well, there we go. Always a lot of fun in the interview. Congratulations. We'll see you guys at Madison Square Garden. And Dash is going to close out the day from Chicago for the last time.
Thank you very much, Shocks, and a much-deserved trip to New York City and Madison Square Garden for this team, and in particular, Odoamne there, who's going to be receiving Player of the Game here for just an absolutely dominating performance 3 times in a row on Jace. I have to imagine that if you're Samsung Galaxy watching this game, looking towards the semifinals, that is a player that you're going to have to watch out for.
And on the other side of the map, Juve has been looking exceptional as well, so this has to be a great matchup for us to keep an eye on. Both of these guys can play carries, they have incredible champion pools, and here you just see him getting solo kills and using all the resources that he got in this series to pretty much great extent.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, again, that's what's so exciting about like Samsung and H2K facing each other, because there are individual players who are performing much better than we expected coming into the tournament. Like, if before the tournament, you would have said the top lane matchup between these two teams would be the most exciting thing to watch. But right now, it is actually probably the most exciting thing to watch. And we also have all the way down, you know, Crown in the mid lane against Rio. We have Rulo down bot lane with Core JJ against Forgiven and Vandal. Like, all these matchups are super, super exciting. And I even ignored the jungle here, which is probably 2 of the biggest stars of these 2 teams.
And as we say goodbye to Albus Nox Luna, I feel that we have to recognize the achievement of this team. You know, they have changed the global perspective on wildcard teams when it comes to international events. People counted them out from the beginning. Here they are qualifying for the quarterfinals, and in pretty, you know, fantastical fashion. And again, here and even in these games, even though you would say, hey, one-sided, you saw the fight and the fire in their eyes.
Oh, yeah. They deserve so much respect just for getting here. They made history, and they did it with style as well.
I mean, on top of that, they're just so nice to watch. Their interviews are just very enjoyable. Just the charisma that this team has is just going to put a really big spotlight onto the region now that for the next year, it's going to be really exciting to see how far they can go.
Inspirational, I think, is what you were looking for there when it comes to listening to these guys. All right, well, we have to look forward, though, now to our semifinal matchups because they are set. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tournament bracket. SKT versus the Rocks Tigers and Samsung Galaxy versus H2K. So, gentlemen, when we look at this bracket, how do we feel?
Fire on the top, ice in the bottom.
Oh, that's true. We got color-coded. We are coordinated.
SK Telecom versus Rocks Tigers. This is a match in the making for so long. And I do love rooting for underdogs. Plus, the smiles on the Rocks Tigers' face when they play. I mean, they just enjoy League of Legends so much. And they're going up against the cold, hard champions. Yeah, SKT, they always seem so stoic. They have victory upon victory upon victory.
They're tired of winning.
Back to. It's so exciting for a semifinal.
Yeah, it's kind of hard though to call Rocks Tigers like the underdogs.
I know. I almost shuddered at that, but it's true. It's true.
I mean, in a way, I actually think it's going to be super even because both teams stomped their quarterfinals and had zero issues, honestly, outside of like one game here and there. So I think both teams, if they perform at the peak, I think it's going to be super even, and there's no like big favorite in that matchup. The other one, obviously, Samsung H2K. Samsung will be heavy favorites. One of the problems, I guess, a weird problem to have for H2K right now is that people will look at this quarterfinal and say, they beat ANX, so let's not overhype them going into this game. But at the same time, people also underrate them now because, well, they just beat ANX, right? And now they're taking on Samsung. I think actually they can challenge, but I don't think they have, right now, judging from what we saw today, enough to actually take down Samsung, but they have a full week to practice.
Well, by that same token, Samsung did obliterate Cloud9 3-0 fashion just as well, and Cloud9 looked pretty much as helpless as ANX did look today. So I think that we have to be careful with both teams and making sure that we're not really putting one as a heavy favorite.
Especially if we just see, some early game gold leads like we've seen in previous series from both of these teams. Can't count them out as you get later into the stages, and we will probably see more of those high pressure decisions where you have to think about, trading bottom inhibitors for Barons and those types of situations where you really start to sweat.
Well, of course, we did just run the coin toss backstage. Samsung Galaxy picked it up, so they will get side selection on 1, 3, and 5. In a sense, considered the higher seed when it comes to the side selection, whereas H2K will get 2 and 4. But pick bans for that series is going to be very interesting to me, mostly because H2K was not forced to show too much today. As you mentioned, kind of running that same composition, being very happy to run what's working. My question is, if Samsung Galaxy picks up a game or changes up the bans on them, how will H2K react?
I mean, that's super hard to answer right now because obviously teams will now look at this matchup and say, okay, we know their top laning will probably prioritize Kennen very highly if he's open. So how do we find an answer to that? Is Jace going to be banned? There's a lot of different things that can go into this one, but I think it's going to be, once again, much like so many other games, it was a lot about counter-picking in the laning phase. And if you are H2K, Caitlyn is a pick you probably won't get to see very often, and that means you have to try and play more around topside like they did today. And that means get a counterpick for Omni suddenly becomes a higher priority instead of like maybe counterpicking bot lane.
I mean, there's actually some bans that are jumping out to me already that seem like must bans in this because you mentioned, the Forgiven's affinity for Caitlyn. He doesn't play Jhin, yet Jhin has been one of Ruler's best champions. Yep. I feel like that's a must ban for them. Caitlyn must ban for the other side. And then you get to the solo laners, right? The lane matchups have been so incredibly important as far as draft phase goes. And the one thing that I would push down on priority list on a lot of teams is not only Olaf, but most of the jungle pinching that's been going on. I just feel like the counter picking in lanes has carried a lot more weight.
The one that I feel like you cannot give up is just in Italy, though. Jankos and Ambition can play it very well. And even though we haven't really seen this champion, it's kind of just the idea of giving somebody that champion and the fact that they can get away so far from the other jungler in terms of farm and just pressure advantage that it's too scary of a factor to give away. And that's most likely just going to be a permanently red side ban, which is really difficult to be in that red side situation for H2K.
All right, Deficio, final thoughts here.
Yeah, I think Samsung, honestly, I like your Italy point there. Make sure it's not picked because if you don't fall behind early as Samsung, you will have superior late game. We've seen that. We've seen H2K struggle there. So honestly, it's about snowballing early for H2K and close it out. And it's about honestly surviving early game for Samsung.
All right, well, with that, tune in next week as Worlds heads to the heart of the Big Apple. Our final 4 teams clash in the world's most famous arena with a shot at the Summoners Cup on the line. On Friday, a rematch of last year's World Finals between SK Telecom and ROX Tigers. And on Saturday, it's Samsung Galaxy versus H2K. Now, throughout the tournament, we've seen some huge moments. You called them out on Twitter using the hashtag World's Big Plays. Let's take a look at a few brought to you by XXX, Return of Xander Cage. Our first tweet comes from Kenny O. So this was Peanut's first competitive game on Olaf? What a god. Let's take a look.
Suddenly Peanut is here on the Olaf, a flash forced out of Philip, but he is still chasing on the Deft, who's nearly out of HP. The chase in the prey, first blood, that's 2 for Peanut, it might be a 3rd. Oh, the axe landed, meaning Deft got rooted, he gets deleted, and it's Feb who wants a little bit more. Scout running out of health, one more shot would get him.
Just the skill shots landing from ROX to be able to get this. The axe lands as the root happens, perfect, and that triggers the rest of the dive.
2 axes change the course of this game.
I mean, Kobe, you talked about junglers at the beginning of the day. I feel like in that SKT versus ROX matchup, if Peanut puts up performances like that could be a really big swing for the ROX Tigers.
Yeah, that has typically been, where we really focus on in this matchup. That and the mid lane, of course, for Faker and Kuro. I mean, there's just so much history. That's why I kind of feel like if you delve back enough into history, they're underdogs. But currently, they did finally get their LCK victory. It's just that one is definitely going to be very exciting. One of the things from that Olaf clip, though, from Peanut with the first one of the hardest things to do is like get the exact distance on your axe so it just hits the champion model, and he immediately picks it up, hits 2 more people. I mean, it's
perfect Olaf play.
Exactly. That's the hardest part about him, and getting maximum DPS out of your undertow was very impressive.
Well, next up from RNG versus SKT, MLXG's miraculous save brought this tweet out of Michael Balsamo, who exclaimed, "Looper is alive, let's roll it."
Now maybe onto Looper.
Looper's in trouble. Cocoon, but he gets off the slicing maelstrom. There's so much damage. Bolt forward. MLXG. He's still
Oh my god,
What on earth was that?
Follow Cocoon, it's a lot of damage, and he's so low now. But then look at the kick. MLXG just repositions, gets the kick off, and then safeguards Looper.
Unbelievable.
It's just such good presence of mind to recognize that in that situation, if you don't get the double kick, you're going to lose that fight horrendously. It's better to wait for it. He does it just right, and wow, that was a beauty.
It really was. I mean, I was kind of sad that the YouTube video I saw online was labeled as Kennen big play.
Oh, no! Mislabeled.
Yeah, he pressed ulti. It was great, except for the fact that obviously when you have a good Lee Sin player, this champion is just insane. And that's why we always want to see Lee Sin, because the skill cap is just so high.
All right, we've had some sick Lee Sin plays so far this tournament, but again, when it comes to junglers, MLXG, somebody that we looked at as maybe underperforming in comparison to what he looked like at MSI, but those are the types of plays he's going to have to be able to make, the aggressive types of moves that have really helped RNG in the past. What am I talking about? Jesus.
In case they were still playing.
It's late on the last day. So finally, Duke went coast to coast. Mr. Elshagan said, "Oh my god, that Narkite from Duke, I can't believe he got the kill on MLXG and survived." Let's see the
Guardian Angel
Narkite.
pops. The rest of SK Telecom, they're down in the bottom lane. Xiaohu's left alone. He hops over the minions, sidesteps a deadly flourish. MLXG's looking for the kill. Sonic Wave connects, resonating strike. Duke might just survive. Mega Knight's going up. The boomerang, the excitement, the hyper. Duke survives.
I actually hate Mata for that play specifically because he used his root over like a GA Tiger who's still dead, hadn't respawned yet, and then suddenly MLXG was caught in this chase. Does manage to pick up the kill, so let's all blame Mata.
He did miss his Q as well, though, so I think it's on both of them. You got to know that respawn timer on the GA.
Honestly, that game was pretty much almost over anyways.
Yeah, whatever.
He's just on the mission like, all right, I'm either killing him or that's good.
I like that camera angle, though. Kind of makes you feel like you're playing the Gnar and the one doing the kiting, because Lord knows I don't have those kinds of mechanics. Well, remember to tweet us at LOL Esports when you see a big play using the hashtag World's Big Plays. That's going to do it for us here in Chicago. Stick around for another edition of Worlds Tonight with Shox, Deficio, and Kobe. We'd like to thank the folks here in Chicago for hosting the 2016 Worlds quarterfinal round. Now for all of us here in the Chicago Theater, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in New York.